With Germany opening up for more people to come in, especially now with the opportunity card, and not just that, with students as well who are trying to come study, one of the questions that a lot of people ask is, what is the cost of living in Germany? Well, that's what I'll be telling you in this video. Generally speaking, Germany is not considered to be an expensive country to live in, especially when you compare it with other European countries. Now, the biggest cost of living is accommodation. Now, depending on the city and what part of the city you want to live in, the cost of accommodation, the cost of renting in this case, would vary largely. For a big city, let's take Munich for example, and Munich is like at the top of the list of expensive cities to live in Germany. Now, in a city like that, rent for a 20 square meter apartment would cost you anywhere around 550 to 850 euros per month. Now, this price will vary depending on the location. Is it within the city? Is it on the outskirts of the city? What level of the building is it on? Is it on the ground floor? Is it on the first floor? Is it on the attic? What amenities are available? Is it furnished? Is it unfurnished? You know, a lot of these things would affect the cost of the rent. Is it a new building? Is it an old building? All of these things would affect that. For a small city like Koblenz, rent for the same 20 square meter apartment would cost you anywhere around 200 to 400 euros per month, depending on the same variables I've said before. You know, the more fancy stuff you have in the apartment, the more expensive it's going to be. The closer it is to the city center, the more expensive it's going to be. The newer the building, the more expensive it's going to be. So all of this you want to bear in mind. If electricity is not included in your rent, which a lot of times is not, except you're staying in a student apartment. Now, if you're staying in a student apartment, it would most likely be included in your rent. A lot of times the electricity bill, the internet bill will be included in your rent if you are staying in a student apartment. If you are staying in a regular apartment, you would most likely pay electricity bills separate. Very rarely do you find that it's together with the rent. Now, generally, let's say on an average, you pay about 60 euros per month for electricity bill, depending on where you're staying, you know, the electricity provider, and how much electricity you're consuming, really. So some areas you might even get as low as, say, 48 euros per month. So like I said, depending on where you're staying and all that different variables. Even if you don't exhaust the electricity for that month, by the end of the year, you are going to get some money back if you don't exhaust all of that. Because there have been a couple of times where we have gotten money back because we didn't exhaust our electricity for the whole year, even though we have paid monthly. So fear not. If you maximize or you minimize your electricity consumption as much as possible, you can get some money back from that. But let's just peg it at 60 euros. Next is internet cost. Now, depending on your internet provider, all of these things will depend on where you're getting some of these things. Depending on your internet provider and the package that you're on and all of that, your internet bill for the month should be around 30, 38, 40 euros. So it could be even 48. Well, it depends on the package, like I said. But let's peg it at 48 euros. Let's say we're generous and we're pegging it at 48 euros per month. Next, telephone bills. The cost of telephone bill for a month would be an average of 10 euros, depending on what network you are using. I use a network where it costs me about 7 euros per month, and that takes care of the extra data that I might need on my phone when I'm on the road. So, of course, there's internet in the house and there's internet at the office. But when I'm on the road, I need something on my phone. So that takes care of my calls, text, everything for the month, and internet. I said not 7 euros, 8 euros actually. So, but let's make it 10 euros, assuming you're using some other like super expensive plan. 10 euros, we're pegging it at. Then radio and TV bill. This bill is annoying in my opinion because I don't even use it. Although now I'm beginning to learn that there are a few channels, you know, sometimes even sports you can watch because you're paying this, you have the right to use all of that. But generally, I don't do TV and radio bill, but you have to pay it anyway. You don't have a choice. It is compulsory. Now, that is going to be, let's just round it up at 19 euros because it's actually 80 euros, something. But let's round it up to 19 euros per month for a single household. So if you are maybe living in a shared apartment, you're going to share that amongst the people living in that apartment. If you have a partner, you're staying with a partner, or you're staying with your family, whatever, you're going to be sharing with the household. So it is 19 euros per household, not per person. Anyway, that's the cost. So total additional housing cost comes to around 143 euros, but let's round it up because we are rounding up these figures. Let's round it up to 150 euros so that, we're not stranded in any way. 150 euros as the additional cost, additional housing cost. Now let's talk feeding and general groceries. Generally, food prices in Germany are considered to be low when you compare them to other European countries. And this is because Germany produces most of its own food. So the cost of the production and all of that, cost of transportation, all those things are cut down largely, and therefore the cost of the food itself is generally lower than you find in other countries. Now, depending on your lifestyle and spending power, there are different categories of grocery stores that you can go shopping at. For cheap stuff, you want to go to shops like Aldi, Lidl, Netto. Those are like the cheap grocery shops. For medium price stuff, you'll be looking at Rewe, Accenta, Kaufland. Actually, sometimes Kaufland can even be really cheap depending on what it is you want to buy. But yeah, it's between mid-range and cheap. And for the rich people, you go to Edeka. That's where the rich people go to, people that have money. But yeah, these are the options that you have for places to shop at. And the prices for these groceries are generally very, very reasonable. So you can get almost everything you need. Of course, bread, milk, oats, everything you can get in all of these shops, regardless of what category it is in. And the prices might not vary as much like in small things, but like in big things, they might really, really vary so much. And sometimes maybe you don't like the taste of one, you prefer the taste of the other, but these are what you have available. Now, when you're getting things like meat, I generally would go to buy my meat in the Arab shops because their meats are generally cheaper as compared to the meat you buy from these shops, whether it is mid-range, the cheap one, or the expensive one. They are generally a lot more expensive than when you go to buy your meat in the Arab shop. So for example, in the Arab shop close to me here, we'll buy a kilo of meat, a kilo of beef for about 10 euros. It's really, really cheap as compared to what you get in these grocery stores. Soft drinks, beer. We know that this country and beer, they are brothers and sisters. They are like twins in the same pod or something. So these are really, really cheap. Bottle of wines are really cheap. You can get wine for as cheap as €5 and for as expensive as your pocket can carry. As expensive as 1,200. Oh my God. Oh my God. We went to a restaurant and we checked the the price card. We checked the wine the card for the what do you call it now? I've forgotten the word. Anyway, we checked the card. And there was a drink, there was a wine for 1,700 euros. I was like, what? Thank God I don't take alcohol. Because what is this? What kind of expenses? But yeah, you can buy wine for really, really cheap and you can buy them for freaking expensive. Now, when you're buying your beer or canned drinks or water or whatever it is that you buy that are in cans, remember to return them back to the shops because you can get back 25 cents on each of them. There's something called fan. Actually, not all the bottles can be returned, but when you check the bottle, you see on the bottle where it is written fund. That is the sign that you can get 25 euros back. You receive it in a form of a ticket. Then that ticket you can now use to buy stuff from the store. For those of us from Africa, don't worry. There are African shops, there are Asian shops, Afro shops, Asian shops, Indian shops, whatever it is that you need. You have these shops, at least a large percentage of them, not like every single part of the world you find, but at least I'm sure of Asian shops, Indian shops, Afro shops, some Caribbean shops. And a lot of times our food, it kind of resemble each other. Sometimes they kind of, cross the borders. So You can always get your own local food from these stores, although they're going to be a little bit more expensive, of course, because these things are not grown here. They're going to be imported and stuff, so the prices are a lot higher. So if you don't want to do that, you can just stick to the regular kind of food that you can get, which is largely potatoes and meat and bread and all that stuff. But it's cool. And this is why I always advise, if you are relocating, make sure that you are carrying some food stuff, like food stuffs that are allowed anyway. So don't go carrying meat and fish and all that stuff. Carry things that are allowed. Okay, I think fish is allowed if it's dried and stuff, but not meat. But as many things that you can carry, please carry them. Your spices, your ogbono, for those of us from Nigeria, egusi, all these things, pack them. They are more important than clothes. You're gonna get clothes here very cheaply. So carry a lot of these things as much as you can carry in your bag, because that would at least sustain you for a while, depending when you either settle into the style, to the food, and at least you can use that to be, douse your homesickness and stuff. At least that's what I advise generally, because the prices of these things here are gonna be very expensive. Expensive. But yeah, it is what it is. Moving on. Sometimes you want to eat out. Now, a meal in a cheap restaurant, so nothing fancy. You can get something even less than 10 euros, but let's just pay it at 10 euros. So you can get something for like 6 euros, 5 euros, and they're really cool stuff that you can eat and be cool. But let's just make an average and say, let's be generous and say 10 euros per meal, not per month, per meal. A mid-range restaurant will cost you about, say, 25-30 euros per meal. A high-end restaurant will cost you maybe, say, around 50 euros per meal. And for those who are bougie, those who are like super, super rich, you can find restaurants that even cost as high as 300 euros and above for meals. Those ones, they are the 1% of the 1%. Those people don't need this video because money is not the problem. They don't have problems with money. They can just do whatever, But yeah, all these things are available. So you cut your coat according to your coat or according to your size, however it is that you said. So I'm going to just put grocery shopping, toiletries, and all of that stuff. I'm going to put everything at around 150 to 200 euros per month. Now, let's talk about transportation. There are various ways to get around Germany, depending on the city that you're in. You have buses, trams, S-Bahns, U-Bahns. Some places you have ferries. For my city, for example, you have suspension trains. You have various ways of moving around. You have bicycle lane. This is really cool that you have lanes that are dedicated to bicycles. So if you have a bicycle, you can do that. Super cool. And of course, the good old walking on your foot. That's another great way of moving around. And Germans are great at walking. And you will learn it once you come here. You learn to walk long distances and stuff like that. But it's really good, It's good for the body, exercise, and all that cool stuff. But despite the very great public transportation, a lot of people still use their cars to move around for whatever reason. It's comfortable, it's more convenient, of course, and sometimes Deutsche Bahn can disappoint you and the trains are cancelled and all that stuff. Well, whatever may be the case, a lot of people still drive their own cars. And the price of this can really, really run up. By the time you put into consideration your fueling, maintenance, insurance, everything, you can have a monthly cost going up to even 500 euros per month. Anyway, thank God for the 49 euro ticket. With that, you can go around the whole of Germany when you're using buses, trains, but not all the trains, of course. The RE train, RB trains, you cannot use the 49 euro tickets for the fast trains. So the IC and ICE trains, you can't use the 49 euros ticket for that. But you can use that for every other type of transportation within Germany. And that is really, really super, super cool. So let's just put the cost of transportation at 49 euros per month. If you decide to do anything more than that, you are the one living the bougie life. If you are a student, your transportation is already covered in your semester contribution. I mean transportation within your city, not outside of your city. within your city. But in some states like NRV, it covers the whole of NRV. But in states outside of NRV, as far as I know, it's usually just within your city and maybe probably a few cities around. So as a student, your transportation is already largely covered by that. Now, some schools, it doesn't cover all of it. It just gives you a discount. So you pay a reduced amount of transportation for the month. But with the 49 euro ticket, if you're a student, you still get a reduced price on the 49 euro ticket. So for students, it's reduced to about 28 euros instead of 49 euros. So that's also really super cool. So which means that you have your student card, which takes you around your city, and you have the extra 28 euros that you pay on top of your student card to then take you around the country. Pretty cool, huh? Let's go to health insurance. If you're a student and you're below 30 years, you're going to be paying health insurance of around 115 euros. If you're above 30 years, your health insurance jumps up to 220 euros, I think 230 euros, depending on what the insurance company that you are using. Now, if you're coming here for work, your insurance would already be taken care of before you even receive your money. So that's not something that you're worried about. But as a student, you need to think about that as a cost that you're going to be having to take care of every month. Now, moving to clothing, because everyone has their own unique style, and their own unique taste. I will not just bore you with the cost of clothing and all, but I will just tell you that it can be really cheap if you want to go really cheap. So if you go to shops like, say, Primark, C&A, and those kind of Kik, things like that, you can get like really, really, really cheap clothes. But if you decide to go to like really expensive stores like H&M, Gucci, Prada, Picado, I think that's the name of the shop, and all those like high-end stores, it's going to be expensive, of course. But I think generally the cost of clothing, shoes, and all of these things are relatively cheap. You can get shoes in cheap stores for as low as, say, 10, 12 euros. It's very possible. Or even shirts for like 10 euros, 8 euros, 12 euros, maybe 20 euros, depending on the quality of the material and the particular clothes you're buying. In cheap stores, of course. You can get things for maybe even as high as 30 euros in the cheap stores. But in the high-end stores, of course, you're going to bring out the money because you're coming to live the bougie life. That's what you're going to be spending on one shirt. You might be spending like 50 euros or 60 euros. And you can have jackets for like 200 euros, really expensive stuff. And you have stores that are like in between, where things are not like crazy priced. They say maybe on an average between 30 to 50-ish euros. But all of this, I'm not going to put the cost of that because that is really dependent on you and how much you have as disposable income to do that. Now, entertainment. In this country, you have to find a way to entertain yourself because you can get bored like really, really quickly. Especially if you come from the part of the world where people are a lot more bubbly, a lot more outgoing, it can be boring like pretty quickly. So you have to find things to go to, events to attend, activities to keep yourself entertained, Now, if you're going to the cinema, you can spend an average of, say, 25 euros for both your ticket and the, say, popcorn and stuff that you will be taking while you are at the cinema. Of course, that depends on the particular cinema that you're going to, or if you are, so there are some cinemas that you buy like a group ticket thing. So maybe you have the ability to watch movies for like a month for a fixed price, depending on all of that. But let's have that as an average of 25 euros per outing. Yeah, and you can also visit some really cool places, so museums, parks, things like that. Museums and parks are the biggest things in this country. They are the biggest things in this country. But yeah, you can find really cool places to visit, really cool things to go do. And let's say you can decide to entertain yourself every other week. And let me say we're pegging entertainment for like 50 euros per month. We are balling, like we are trying to live the bougie life. We're trying to get entertained. So let's keep it at 50 euros per month. That's crazy anyway, in my opinion. I don't even spend that much. I don't even entertain myself like every other month. I'm enough entertainment for myself in this house. and I have YouTube, and I have Netflix, and I have everything. So I entertain myself by myself in the house. Once in a while, I go out anyway to just have some fun. Yeah. Hair care. Now, for the guys, you guys are very lucky. You guys are not spending so much money. For like 20 euros, you can get a good haircut for whatever kind of hair you have, whether it's a type C hair like us or, a straight hair. It's simple, pretty cheap. But for people like us, with our people like me with this my crazy hair, we spend so much money on our hair. It's freaking expensive. But let me make a very, very, very conservative average, a super conservative average of about, say, 100 euros for each hair that you make. It depends on the hair now, the style, the person making the hair, and all the different stuff that you have to use for the hair and how often you are changing the hair. So let us just put it as, say, 100 euros. Now, I don't know if that's going to be every month, depending if you're doing your hair every month or if it's every 2 months or every 3 months. But just know that for every time you go to make your hair, let's have a budget in our mind of about that price. Now, these are the expenses that make up the cost of living in Germany. I hope this has been helpful. And if you found it helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. Share this video to other people who might need it as well. And if you haven't subscribed, come on, it's free. Please hit the subscribe button and do have a fantastic, fantastic week until we see you another time. Ciao.